Hi everyone, welcome to Form. In this YouTube series, we sit down with creatives, historians, and cultural figures shaping how fashion is made, interpreted, and remembered. Today, we're joined by Ryan Yip, a critic, historian, and founder of Fashion Review, a print publication dedicated to restoring depth to fashion criticism. Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Very excited for this chat. Very looking forward to this conversation. Yeah.
Cool. I wanted to kind of begin before your work, before you were kind of interested in fashion even, and to give you also the chance to introduce yourself to those that might not know you. So on that note, like who are you? Where did you grow up? And kind of what was that environment like for you? And how did you kind of get your first inkling into the fashion space?
Well, I'm from Hong Kong, born and raised in Hong Kong. So I left Hong Kong when I was 18, went to Vancouver. That's where I went to UBC for my degree in food, nutrition, and health. So completely not related to fashion. And during that time, I had I went through different phases. I had a phase of like super into like bodybuilding, working out, and then going into food science. That makes sense because like, oh, going into the whole whatever gym food industry, that kind of makes sense to me. But then I think it was in second year um, that my kind of vision changed from, you know, okay, like a clear path into the food industry into, ooh, I'm starting to like, I took an interest in like learning about watches and also whiskey. So it was like, there's like a very, very, so-called finer things in life. So I started looking into them, started reviewing watches, started, talking about whiskey. And that's when I started really my first taste of content creating. And I love talking about things. I don't just want to like say, oh, this is a new thing, this and that. I love to kind of attach my own opinion on the design of it or like the nuances and the taste and the, design in watches or taste in whiskeys and whatever. So that didn't work out. But while I was like taking a break from content creating, I was still feeling that itch of like I want to find something to talk about. Then that's when I switched focus to fashion because I was looking for something that I've kind of already have an affinity towards, and fashion or maybe just styling in general has been in my life forever because my mom is a fashionista. She loves dressing up. She um, well, when I started learning more about fashion, that's when I realized that she's been like buying like Yohji Yamamoto Kombi like early 2000s, 24 or 47, 11, 20, right? Very niche brands here and there. Like my mom have like pieces from these brands, but she doesn't necessarily know about fashion. So um, then I was like, oh, fashion seems to be something that is in my life already. It feels natural to start talking about it. So I started kind of just buying books from like big bookstores, like just learning as much as I can. That's when I came across this book. Forgot the actual name of it, but it's something like Fashion Evolution, important looks throughout the past how many years, 50 years or something. And I was just like each page is like a moment, like the white collection from Valentino in 1970s or whatever, and then learning about body map, learning about Granny takes a trip, like all these like very specific moments kind of opened my eyes to there's just so many different interesting stories out there. So that's when I started like reading a page a day, make a video. So I'll read a page, make a video a day. That's how I started my TikTok, and then it slowly transitioned back to like I don't just want to tell stories. I want to be able to attach my own opinion onto fashion. And then I started like kind of honing my craft and like criticism. What does it actually mean to give a good like critique or how to actually review things from a nuanced angle, understanding the designer while also like being assertive. So that's where I am now with I guess my magazine as well. So
That's
yeah.
super cool. Yeah, and I want to get into your reviewing process, but I want to stay with that like history for a second because I know you've spent obviously a lot of time studying fashion's past. When you engage with fashion history, what do you think role it plays in your thinking specifically? Is it more of like a basis of evidence? Does it come as a wave of inspiration to you, or is it something that's a bit more intimate, or like something that you feel as an obsession to study? And how does that inform your process, I guess?
Um, I guess it's a point of reference, but I don't actively recall it and be like, oh, so who did this in the 80s. So it's, oh, it's better back then, or this and that. Like it's a point of reference for me in a sense that because fashion is quite, well, very like restricted to, whoever pay attention to it, they will know. It's not as like widely accessed like now. So the way things were is much more restricted than things are right now. So if you say like recently, I was making a video talking about the effectiveness of a show versus a good show. So I mentioned this brand called Body Map. They had a show which at the finale, in the finale, it's just, I think it's just a bunch of kids rolling on top of like models rolling on the floor. So it's just like a very rogue moment. It's like having fun. But that moment is not just an entertaining moment. It's what also consolidated the show because it echoed the clothes. If someone were to copy that nowadays, it wouldn't make sense. Right. So if I see that exact moment being recreated today, and I have that knowledge of, oh, that's Body Map doing that back in the 80s, I wouldn't do a direct comparison. It's just kind of like informing me that, oh, wait, they did it back then like that. Let's try to understand how they're doing it now. It doesn't make sense for nowadays, or they're just copying for the sake of copying. So I try not to let history dictate how I see things or how I think that, oh, history, like in this point in fashion history, it was way better. So whoever's trying to copy it now, they're never going to live up to that expectation. I try not to let that influence me because it's very easy to fall into that trap for a lot of people. So yeah, it's just more like a point of reference, just a bank of, I guess, knowledge at the back of my mind that I can refer to.
Yeah. And how did you start training yourself to look at fashion more critically? Because I know you started with books, I guess, but what did you study first? Was there a specific point of reference that you had that was really like formative for you? And what do you think that most people skip in that step when they're trying to look at fashion critically, when they're talking about fashion? What do you think most people skip? And how do you recommend people like that are starting to get into fashion start? Like, where do they start, right?
It is a very hard question because I started from a very, very different place, I suppose, because I was just like using my like university like library access to just look for as much things as possible, like look for academic journals that you cannot find in big bookstores, right? So that was my like my edge, I guess, because I was just reading papers. But then I found this book. It's a textbook, and it's I think it's just called, literally called, Fashion Criticism. And it's written, I forgot who is it by. It's some, I think his name's Peter something. The book is just called Fashion Criticism. It's a very scientific way, almost like a guide to how to form a strong opinion, how to form a good criticism. What does it entail? Let's look at history. What is a good criticism? What's a bad criticism? What kind of angle you need to consider? What things that you normally wouldn't think of because you just think that, oh, it's a personal opinion dressed in a professional way. But it's more than that, right? Because it's the point of a criticism is that you want to help whoever you're criticizing. Like whether it's a bad or a good criticism, you want it to in some way better it, right? So I read that book. I was like absolutely mind blown. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know it can be so scientific with it. And then that's when I started like finding different critics' work. Like I started reading Susan Sontag. I started reading Virginia Woolf, Jenny Diskey, Christopher Hitchens, like different people with drastically different styles talking about different things. That's not fashion. That's when I understand that, like even just to analyze like how they start their article. what do they talk about first? Then how do they ease into it? Like Susan Sontag is very like almost like cruel. She's a bit cruel the way she talk about things, and she just go right into it. But a lot of like Virginia Woolf, I always say that she's a bit more motherly. Like she lets you know what went wrong, what went right, but in a roundabout way. So by kind of like reading, I don't read them intensely, but whenever I get a chance, I will search them up. I try to learn it as best as I can. You start to realize that it's not just about the opinion. It's how you craft, how you dress it, and the angles. As I said, the angles are very important. You cannot come off as arrogant. It's all just about you. You need to also consider, or maybe it's just me, you need to consider where the creator is coming from, so you can give something that's actually constructive. Yeah, that's, I guess, my tips.
Yeah, I guess actually that leads right into my next question, which is about kind of honesty in fashion discourse. Because the idea of you've written about this as well in your work, that the idea that like bluntness alone isn't really depth.
Yes.
So what's like the difference for you between a take that's honest and one that's useful, I guess? And which do you personally like feel more responsible for delivering as a critic?
I think honesty is definitely, a key component in good, criticism. I think honesty is definitely a big part of it, but as you mentioned, my opinion on honesty is not just, I think anyone can be honest in a way that you can just say that, oh, I don't like that. Oh, this is very bad, or this is very good. And that is not helping anyone, because that's just, I guess, the starting point of things, right? Like even when you say like, oh, that's very beautiful. Beautiful, so it's, yes, it's an adjective that describe, the thing's very good looking, but at the same time there are different kinds of beauty that you should expand on to let people know, okay, what kind of beauty are you talking about here? Is it the sublime kind of beauty that's, something that scare you, or like that, that's it, like a serene kind of beauty? Like it's a starting point, to be honest. And if you are unable to pinpoint your actual emotion to why you think something is good, honesty kind of serves no purpose. It serves as entertainment. And I think entertainment is a big driving force online right now. As long as people are entertained, they don't really care about the content. But there also, I feel like a lot more people are starting to understand that being entertained is not enough. Like being, like, I guess, superficially entertained is not enough. They want to know, they want to pick your mind. They want to actually know, okay, tell us more. Why do you think something is bad? Like then they can also get into an agreement or disagreement, which I always welcome. Yeah, so bluntness itself is not enough, but it should serve as like almost like a foundation to how you express your opinion.
Yeah. And when you review a collection, I'm interested to know, before you're even writing a word or speaking a word, what your process is. Like, what is your evaluation framework when you're thinking about reviewing a collection, and and I think specifically I'm interested in where your personal instinct kind of enters the criteria, because I think there's a level of fashion that's so entangled with our own personal views. Just as we are looking at a piece of art, you feel emotion, you feel
Mhm.
something. So how does that enter the equation for you, and how do you start to evaluate like a collection in that way?
I think instinct, like first impression, is very important. I mean, just by you asking that question, that reminded me when I first saw, I think it was like 3, 4 seasons ago, Saint Laurent, when Anthony started like putting out collections that's very limited to just a few, like a variation of a few looks, right? The whole collection is just a few. Like the start of that, my first impression of that was, wow, this is lazy, right? So I saw that and I just kind of discounted it. I didn't even want to talk about it because that was my only thought of it. So I don't want to waste anyone's time just telling them, oh, I think that this is lazy. But then I remember, I think it was like maybe a collection or two collections later, while he's doing the same thing, just variations of a few looks. I gave it another go and I was like, wow, I was wrong, because this is a good thing in the sense that he's confident in what he can provide. He knows what he wants people to see, wants people to enjoy. He don't need to like cater towards a wide audience, and therefore allowing customers to choose from, almost like, okay, this is a template that you're gonna like. I'm gonna provide you with 8 variations where you can, go crazy on. I think that's a very mature way of like merchandising. So I remember that, like, almost like that internal conflict. I remember it's like, wow, I was so wrong. This is not lazy at all. This is actually very good. And I quite liked it. Ever since that point, I, started really liking that kind of vision. So when I look at a collection, I always kind of listen to my first instinct, but also it is important to me to always revisit collections that I've talked about, because I don't believe in, seeing it one time and then you form your best opinion seeing it one time, right? So yeah, that's how I work. I guess the two thing that will definitely happen is, I will listen to my initial instinct, and I will always revisit collections that I've looked at and formed an opinion on. Whether I made a video or wrote about it, that's different, but I will always revisit just to check myself, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. And on that note, is there a specific thread that you see when you're reviewing a collection or when you're changing your mind about a collection that like actually causes that change of mind? Like, is it just purely like one off based on the collection that you're reviewing, or is there something that you've seen where, oh, this actually happens again and again, and I find myself changing my mind consistently about this particular thing? Like you mentioned the Saint Laurent example, but is there a common thread in that mind shift when you review a collection again?
I think the common thread that caused the mind shift is that sometimes I forget that's how I look at things. Like it's a weird thing. It's a weird concept to tackle, because obviously, you should know how things make you feel sometimes, like instinctively, but it is like, okay, your instinct might be very ignorant. Like it might be a very like selfish point of view. So like just now, let's say I looked at the collection and I was like, it's kind of limiting. This is boring. This is lazy. This, like, from my very selfish point of view. I don't want to just broadcast that because that helps no one, right? But then I also remember my kind of the reason why I love Tom Brown, like, I mean, I don't have such a strong affinity towards them anymore, but the reason why I used to like Tom Brown is because I really admire the idea of evolution instead of like complete change. It's the same thing, same visual, but it's just like tiny tweaks each collection, and I enjoyed that. So looking at the Saint Laurent collection, it almost like reminded me, wait, I do enjoy that because I do see the value in it. So that I sort of have like almost like an internal battle of, my own selfish point of view versus something that I objectively do like. I do like seeing in brands. So that conflict will happen, and I will start to like almost wrestle between, okay, where does my actual opinion now lie between the two? Then that's how my, I guess, shift of opinion happened. Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. I want to go into your founding of Fashion Review because I think that's really interesting. What problem were you trying to solve by founding Fashion Review that digital platforms just couldn't solve for you, and why was print like the best format for that? Do you think?
I guess the problem is that, sometimes I got a lot to say and I couldn't fit it in like a reel. I couldn't fit in a reel that still retained people's attention. I also like just still don't know how sometimes people can like make 5-6 minutes reel and they pop off. Every time I try to do that, no one watches it. So it's like, oh, maybe it's just not my strong suit to just sit there and speak for 6 minutes. So I was like, but still at the same time, it's not just about the length of video. It's also about how, if I give myself time to process my thought and condense what maybe I need to use 30 words to form one thought, I can use 6 words to express that. It's more succinct. And I think looking for that, like, being straightforward, being able to really hone in on what I'm trying to say with the least word possible is the reason why written format is so close to my heart. Like I do still love writing because I find myself expressing my thoughts in different ways. Even if it's the same topic, I might have different ways of packaging the same message. And fashion review started because, well, on one hand, what I just said. On the other hand, it's every time I try to pitch anything to big magazines, no one likes it. Like literally, I have zero success rate. No one ever wanted to move forward with my articles. I don't know if it's my problem or it's like, hey, maybe it's too cerebral. Like we don't like that's not our what our audience would want to read. It's okay. I don't mind, but it's just my personal experience. Everyone seems to have like great success in pitching to art. Hey, have you tried pitching to magazines or newspaper? Yeah, I tried like 20 times, zero success rate. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start my own magazine. I'm just gonna have my own platform. And with that, I found out that a lot of people kind of struggle with the same thing. They want to write more in-depth article that is not, I guess, traditionally associated with bigger magazines, bigger media, print media, and they all love that. There's almost like an unrestricted space for them to just like nerd out, like speak about things that normally, I guess, your normal fashion enjoyer wouldn't think about or would even be interested in. Um, so yeah, which is it's a very interesting phenomenon. Like the moment I started, it's just like an overwhelming support and oh my god, like this is exactly what I'm looking for as a writer. I would love to like pitch. Um, yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why I started.
No, that's perfect. I wanted to actually double down on that point you made about kind of big institutions and big, magazines and writing hubs, because the contemporary fashion ecosystem is kind of structurally entangled in that way, where you have brands that fund these influencers. You have influencers that rely on access, they rely on media, media
Yeah,
relies on advertising. In that environment, what does this type of independence actually mean to you, and how do you protect your credibility in a system that really incentivizes you being aligned with the brands or the media or the advertising with the largest budgets?
that's a good question because that is like, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, like that is the actual struggle of running an independently owned magazine, which is money, because you gotta be out there, promoting brands. But I don't want to lose the integrity. So it is an active struggle, and I don't think I have a very smart answer to how I am like positioning myself because that's something that I am still trying to solve. But at the same time, I guess in what's that word I'm looking for? In a philosophical way, I understand that this is what a lot of people want. I do believe that deep down, even though it may take me some time to find a substantial group of support. I do know that this is where the pendulum is swinging to. People are yearning for independent voices or just voices that actually want to speak about something that is worthwhile. Um, but I don't want to say this in a sense of like I'm just condemning like quick content because it's a both it's a balance of both. I love quick content because it gives you a lot in a short time. I love that. That's how the world is going to continue to work with. But it's also okay, we have that. Can we also have longer form content that talk about, as I said, more in-depth things that require you to, sit there and give it a think. Um, I genuinely believe that's where the community is also what they're looking for, and that's why, even though I am struggling to find an answer to solve that issue, this idea and this, I guess, confidence is what is keeping my drive alive.
Yeah. And I guess on the point of like going in depth, and like educating people, I think that's really where people are seeing a lot of value is like in education in fashion. Do you see education and critique as kind of distinct responsibilities, or to you are they really like inseparable? And when you publish something for something, so for someone to read, for someone to watch, who do you ultimately feel accountable to?
Um, I don't think I will align with, the idea that I'm educating my audience, because I think that is a bit egotistical that I'm teaching them things. But I think what I'm doing is I'm providing a perspective, and that's it. Like, I'm letting them know it's possible to look at things from this angle, also from your angle, also from the other contributor's angle. That is what I try to do. I don't think I'm trying to educate my audience or people that I talk about, because on one hand, who am I to teach them anything? But on the other hand, whatever I'm trying to teach them, they might already know, or they have no interest in learning. So it would be weird for me to do this with the idea of teaching. But yeah, I do enjoy. Well, I guess my target audience that I have in mind, that I write to, is, I guess in general, just anyone that actually care about fashion as a practice, as a culture. Um, but yeah, I think the overarching thing that I'm trying to do is provide a perspective. So critiquing is already kind of like a loose term, because I don't think I'm always critical, but I'm always trying to provide a perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the last couple questions here, and more on critique. Like, there's this like sentiment that's always recurring that criticism doesn't matter. That like designers create the work and critics kind of react from the sidelines. Where do you think that like criticism has true impact? Like, where is its true value for you?
The true value is that I do believe that designers don't have to find it valuable, in a sense that, oh, I can learn something from this. But I think it is the matter of, do they feel seen? And whatever thing I want them to improve on, can they agree with it? They don't need to take it on board. But I think there can be a relationship where they don't need to be like rivalries. Like, oh, you created something, now watch a bunch of critics just like tear it down in front of you, right? I don't think that should be the dynamic, but it's about, I respect your work. I know, you're a professional, and I want you to also respect my work. We don't have to like have this symbiotic relationship, right? But I think it can be a parallel, kind of, yeah, relationship, where we both acknowledge each other's like professionalism, and also hopefully, acknowledge that we are trying to do the best we can, and they are providing, new ideas in the form of a product or in the form of campaign. We're trying to provide perspective in how to, in different interesting way or thought-provoking way, to look at art, to look at, the creation that you made. We don't have to step on each other's toe and have them point towards us and point at us and be like, oh, you're just, waiting to, to prey on our work. And we are just looking at them and be like, oh, when's your next work coming? I can't wait to write about it. So yeah, that's the relationship that I hope that we can all strive for.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I guess the last question here is like looking beyond kind of like the current cycle of fashion. What are you kind of trying to build toward long term, and kind of when the dust settles, when all is said and done, what do you hope to have contributed, just generally? Very
That's a good
introspective
question.
here, yeah.
Um, well, currently I'm trying to be published. So I guess that's my short-term goal, short-term, long-term goal. I don't know. But I do hope that, um, I can leave a mark in a way that I was pushing for that relationship I was talking about with, like, either, whether it's like fashion review or another project that I might do in the future, whatever. My whole body of work is to push for the idea that perspectives doesn't need to hurt, um, and at the same time, it don't need to be overly critical for it to be entertaining or valuable. It is all about how can we look at art in a fun way, and everyone can join in as well. Yeah, so it's a big question. So I'm just like thinking on top of my mind, trying to like condense what I actually do. But yeah, that's, I think, can describe where I want to go. Walk towards in the future.
Yeah, that's perfect. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Before we close, where can people find your work?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I think they're all. I think they're all called Ryan Yip Fashion. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I also have a blog. The website's ryanyip.fashion. And I also have a magazine, Fashion Review issue 3. I think it's coming out later this year, later towards the end of the year. And yeah, look at my stuff, watch them with open mind. I hope you enjoy them.
Perfect. If you'd like to follow the rest of the series, you're welcome to subscribe. And if you'd like to explore the garments, archives, and context surrounding these conversations, you can visit FORM.space, link below.